Most people start a side hustle thinking in projects. So, one deliverable, one invoice, one paycheck. And that is completely fine in the beginning because you are proving that you can execute. However, one offs do not create stability, they create spikes. And don't get me wrong, spikes, they feel exciting. You land a client, you send the invoice, you feel momentum, you get that rush until it stops. And then you're back at zero, hunting again. If episode 2 was about speed to income, this episode is about stability.
Welcome to UGC Pro, the podcast where creative strategy, UGC innovation, and freelancing success collide. I'm your host, Kelly Rockline, a self-taught creative marketer from the brand and creator side. With over a decade of experience working with hundreds of brands and driving over $500 million in revenue. Now, as a mentor to more than 10,000 aspiring UGC creators and creative strategists, I'm here to help you unlock your full potential. Whether you're here to sharpen your ad game or gain fresh insights to elevate your creative freelance business, you're in the right place. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, or habit stack. Is there a pile of laundry that you need to get through? What about unloading the dishwasher? Maybe it's a good time to go out and get some fresh air. Whether you're cuddled up on the couch or getting your steps in, I am so happy you're here. So without further ado, let's dive in.
And like I said, random money, it feels good. However, predictable money changes your behavior. Predictable money changes your confidence. Predictable money changes your leverage. Here's where most people get stuck. They stay in execution mode forever. They trade time for money, which was something that I caught myself stuck in. Delivering the thing, getting paid, disappearing, and then having to start the process all over again. I mean, that is a treadmill I do not want to be on. And when you operate at that level, your side hustle will always feel fragile because your income depends on constant hunting. The shift happens when you stop being a task and start being a solution for your clients. I mean, think about it. Clients don't actually want deliverables. They want outcomes. And once you understand that, everything is going to change. I call this the income evolution ladder. So step 1 is one-off work where you are proving that you can deliver, you're building trust, and you're getting your reps in. Step 2 is where repeat work comes into play. The same client rehires you again and again, and income starts stabilizing, followed by step 3, which is predictable positioning. You stop selling deliverables and you position yourself as the ongoing solution, a long-term partner. Followed by step 4, which is leverage. You specialize, you get paid for your thinking, your strategy, your direction, your consulting. And trust me, this progression, it works in any field. It could work for engineers who build and then specialize, or maybe then advise. Sales reps who close, then maybe narrow their niche and then train teams. It works in any category of any industry. For example, for me, it obviously started with UGC, user-generated content. So brands were initially paying me for UGC, ranging anywhere from say like maybe lower end $350 upwards to $1,000+ per video. And that was level 1 for me. But I started noticing something, that the clients who kept rehiring me, they weren't just paying for those videos. They were asking, what hook should we test next? Why is this angle outperforming? Which persona do you think will convert the most? They weren't just paying for my content, they were paying for my thinking. And that was a huge shift for me. That's when I moved into creative strategy consulting and eventually into retainers with clients that at the very minimum were paying 10 hours a week, so 40 hours a month at $6,000 and up to $200 an hour. And that didn't happen because I randomly rebranded. It happened because I paid attention to what clients were valuing most. So this is your reminder, don't force evolution. You just have to recognize it. It's very much going to be a gut check.
As I've been building out the extended YouTube and podcast deep dive, expanding on this limited series in partnership with Entrepreneur, I realized that I do need to pause and speak directly to a specific group of you. I say specific group because if you are already in marketing, studying marketing in college, working adjacent to performance, or in sales, or you genuinely enjoy content creation, you are uniquely positioned to win in either UGC or creative strategy, or both like me. Or if you're a former or active commercial actor, if you understand scripts, delivery, and audience psychology, even if you studied it in your undergrad, you are closer to launching a high-income side hustle than you think. UGC and creative strategy are not influencer jobs, they are performance roles. And the skills needed are some of the most valued ones in marketing today. UGC works because it's adjacent to skills that already exist in the market. Brands need content that converts organically on TikTok and Instagram. So think of like the post that they're actually posting to their page. That said, they also need content that converts in paid ads and drives revenue for the brand. And at that intersection is where performance creative sits. They need people who understand hooks, angles, testing frameworks, and iteration cycles. Most internal teams either lack the bandwidth or the depth in performance creative. And when I see a gap, I see opportunity. And honestly, creative strategy is even greater leverage. It moves you from being the person on camera to the person that is directing what gets tested from a strategy perspective. It's understanding why something works, not just how to film it, and thinking is always going to pay more than execution. What I love about creative strategy especially is it's also very flexible. Not that UGC isn't, but maybe you love content and strategy, but you don't want to be on camera. Obviously, creative strategy is going to allow you to operate behind the scenes as compared to a UGC creator, like you literally have to be on camera. And say, for example, maybe you work a full-time job, 40 hours a week, and you can carve out 10 hours of spare time for consulting. For example, 10 strategic hours a week can equal $6,000 a month in retainer income. That's literally what I charge one of my clients for 40 hours a month. So if you are in marketing, this is going to compound your resume. If you are a student, this gives you real world reps faster than waiting for an internship. It might actually be the reason why you secure that internship. The market does not pay for credentials alone, it pays for proof. So it's going to help you build things like your case studies. Because unfortunately, I watched many peers graduate expecting high salaries immediately, only to realize entry level still requires earning your reps. I chose to earn reps first by not going to college, so by the time many of my peers were graduating, I already had years of experience compounding, I had built case studies, etc. If you're in another industry entirely, but you understand things like messaging, persuasion, storytelling, or even psychology, this is a lateral move, not starting over. We've had students from like nursing, psychology, corporate roles, even retirees, like Gen Xers, people who had transferable skills, build literal 6 and even 7-figure businesses after learning how to apply those skills to UGC and creative strategy and beyond, because the ones that are pushing the 7 figures have now applied what we taught them to TikTok Shop. And the most powerful part, they didn't guess their way there. They followed the structure that UGC Pro laid out for them. Since summer of 2022, I've taught over 17,900 students, which is like crazy to say. Like that many people trusted our video courses and our resources. And that is exactly why I built UGC University and our Intro to Creative Strategy video course. So really quickly, UGC University, it teaches positioning, pitching, pricing, and execution, everything that is required to operate as a high-performing UGC creator. And then our Intro to Creative Strategy video course teaches you how to think in performance, which means how to analyze data, structure tests, and make strategic decisions instead of just producing assets. And after completing it, students typically do one of two things. They either raise their rates, often sometimes even doubling them. And when I say rates, I'm talking about UGC because they now deliver insight and not just content. So when a brand hires them, they know that this UGC creator operates like a creative strategist, or they unlock an entirely new income stream offering creative strategy consulting to brands, further diversifying their income. When you shift from creator to strategic partner, brands pay so much more. One thing to point out too is like if you're just looking for occasional one-off work, UGC is definitely more fitting because you're more likely to secure a reoccurring monthly retainer and contract as a creative strategist as compared to a UGC creator. And this isn't hype. It is leverage in a skill set that brands are already paying a ton of money for. To those that are watching and this lane makes sense for you, the resources are there. They're linked in the description. Use code YouTube25 for 25% off. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not really into content or strategy, it's okay because the blueprint, it still applies and you can work on that in your side hustle workbook, which we created in partnership with Entrepreneur, and I've also linked in the description below. Either way, build something that gives you options. That is the most important takeaway from this long editor note. And back to our regularly scheduled program. I have a memory of like one of the first times where I realized that clients really valued my thinking more than the actual deliverables themselves, and it was during a debrief call after a campaign. I
assumed that we would talk about revisions, next steps, whatever. Instead, the client spent most of the time asking why I structured the hooks the way that I did and how I'd approach the next round of testing. And that's when it clicked for me. They were not hiring me just to execute, just to film the UGC. They were hiring me to interpret data and guide decisions strategically. And there was a specific moment, there's been a few, when a client basically says like, hey, can you just tell us what we should do next quarter or like next test, next campaign, etc. And that question honestly changed everything. It shifted the dynamic from vendor to advisor. And yes, I mean, I did experience imposter syndrome. I still do today on and off, especially when I raise my rates and do it for the first time. You're gonna feel that, but it is well worth it. The first retainer, it might feel scary. It felt scary for me and stabilizing at the same time, which is weird, but also very real. It was a 10-hour monthly minimum. And I remember thinking, okay, now I have to really own this. But that retainer didn't change my income. It changed how I saw myself. I stopped pitching tasks and I started leading strategy. But Kelly, how do I move from project to retainer? Well, this is where most people hesitate because they assume clients aren't going to say yes. Here's the reframe. I need you to shift your perspective. If a client hires you twice, they have a reoccurring problem that needs to be solved. And that requires that reoccurring solution. Instead of following up and asking, do you want to do another project? I want you to try this. Hey, I've noticed that you're consistently needing support with X or Y. Would it make more sense to structure this as an ongoing support so that we can be proactive instead of reactive? It's as simple as that. You are not selling them. You are bringing a solution to the table for them, not a Band-Aid fix, a long-term partnership that would resolve their pain points. You are not pitching for more work. You are offering stability. And clients, they love stability, especially in an economy where they don't want to add headcount to have that monthly overhead with full-time employees. And this is a trend that I've been seeing taking place over the last 3-4 years. Companies are cutting overhead. They are often happier paying a higher hourly rate or even a retainer than adding a salary, benefits, which is basically like 30% of the salary on top of that, and then long-term commitment, which is why this is something you need to leverage. So if you have your workbook handy, I want you to open to the pricing and packaging cheat sheet on page 6. If you haven't yet downloaded this, it's linked in the description. So there are 3 core pricing structures: hourly, project, and retainer. Hourly is good for overflow work. Project pricing works when the outcome is clearly defined, and retainers work when the problem is ongoing. I will say my setup is I charge hourly and then it's discounted based on their level of commitment. So your goal isn't to jump into retainer immediately or whatever that end goal is. Your goal is to notice when the problem keeps repeating and strategically opening up that dialogue. This is a rule that I followed when I first started out. If you deliver 2 or 3 wins for your client, your first client, I want you to raise your rates for your next client. I want you to start slightly higher than you're comfortable with. You know, it's one of those things where you'll win again and then you can adjust upward again. And confidence is going to compound. So does pricing. So if you're feeling a little uncomfortable about this, trust me, I've been there before. The goal of a side hustle is not to work more forever. It is to evolve. And if you stay at level 1, you are going to be on this never-ending treadmill. If you specialize and you move into thinking, you're going to create leverage for your future self. And that's how you go from extra money to durable secondary income. And that's how you move from spikes to stability. In the next video, we are going to talk about the question everyone eventually asks, which is, when is it actually safe to leave my full-time job? If that's what you want to do. Because I will say quitting too early can be reckless, but staying dependent on your singular employer too, long-term, can be even riskier. And the difference between those two is the threshold, which we're going to talk about in the next video.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the UGC Pro podcast. I hope today's episode gave you inspiration and practical steps to apply to your business. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to hit follow, leave a review, and share it with another creator or marketer. And make sure to catch our next episode. Now, I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say you will not want to miss out. Until then, remember that success is a strategy and you are your most valuable client. So treat yourself like it. And lastly, if you aren't already connected with us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, look up UGC Pro and be sure to follow along. And as always, I wish you the best of luck on your UGC and creative strategy journey.